Hi, everyone, and welcome to State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel. Play your game. I'm Tom Hannifan. He is Nittany Lion legend Deon Butler, sitting in for Justin King for the remainder of what will maybe be a postseason. It looks like Penn State is officially bowl eligible. They improved to 6-6, finishing off a game in Piscataway that was a lot more stressful than a lot of us probably envisioned. Final score: Penn State wins by a score of 40-36. The spread in this game, entering the game according to FanDuel, was 13.5 in favor of Penn State. So some of you might be upset. And at the same time, I believe the over-under was about 56.5 or 55.5, somewhere in there. So whoever bit the over in this game, you're pretty happy early in this game. So you got that locked up. Happy Thanksgiving weekend, everybody. Happy third birthday to Xavier Butler, by the way. Today's a big day for all of us here at State of State. So Deon, congratulations to you and your family. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. This was frustrating, concerning, stressful, and at the same time, Penn State pulls out a win to close out a tumultuous 2025 regular season. What's your stress level like right now, Deon? Mine's high.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was one of those. It was literally like defenses couldn't stop the other offense. Just some key plays that were being missed. So definitely, I thought, honestly, what they were doing to us as far as controlling the line of scrimmage and running for, I don't know if he ended up going for 200 yards, but really, really close to it. I thought that was going to be our game plan. Granted, we still did run the ball, but definitely stressful. But, honestly, for a game to be, hey, this is deciding if you're bowl eligible or not. What I really did like, though, was the fight in those guys. Like, the team was fighting. Not everything, obviously, was going our way, but they stayed in it. They fought hard. Defense came up with a big play at the end to help us out. And then offensively, when it mattered on those fourth downs, some crucial plays definitely came through.
Yeah, when it mattered, Penn State tightened up, took care of business. Penn State was 3 of 3 on fourth down throughout this game, 1 of 8 on the third down, which is not ideal. At the end of the day, over 1,000 yards of total offense between Penn State and Rutgers in this game. To your point, Rutgers running back Antoine Raymond, who had himself a very nice day. And that Rutgers offensive line controlled Penn State, the defensive line, almost the entire game. Raymond, 29 carries for 189 yards, a touchdown, 6.5 yards per carry. Fortunately for Penn State football, the great Katron Allen, the all-time leading rusher in Penn State history, 22 carries, 226 yards rushing, a touchdown, 10.3 yards per carry. Nick Singleton broke the all-time rushing touchdown record, formerly held by Saquon Barkley, with 2 scores, 9 for 86. He averaged 9.6. Penn State had 300 yards rushing in this game, but this was still extremely stressful. When I go to our comment section here, thank you all for joining us live on YouTube. This is going to get reposted to our YouTube and audio only channels after this. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel for just 99 cents a month. You can get all past and upcoming episodes of State of State ad-free, commercial-free for just 99 cents a month. Follow the link in the description of this podcast. Josh saying, glad to see the boys get bowl eligible, but a head-scratching result. He followed up saying, what did we just watch? Bad Penn State defense or good Rutgers offense? Deon, I think it was a little bit of both, but how do you feel?
I think it was a little bit of both, right? I think it was one of those things we knew they could pass the ball around like that, right? So they've thrown the ball, but, what I don't think anybody expected was that rushing game, right? Because even before we talked about how kind of they really have shown a tendency to pass the ball a lot, and rushing was never really their thing. Obviously, we feel like in the trenches we have a serious advantage. So to see the line of scrimmage being changed like that, as far as on their offensive line to our defensive line, was very head scratching. So I understand that comment completely, because it's just like, I'm not sure, but we're not just winning the one-on-one battles up front. It's just definitely there were a lot of lane gashing and just, guys were 2 and 3 yards out of the field before even getting contact with that running back today. And just to have someone 189 yards for a team that doesn't rush that well is definitely, I think, more so bad defense than good offense. They had a good game plan, give it to them, but I think that's kind of been one of the things this season is, right, we thought we would have definitely a lot more dominance up front on the defensive end, and we haven't seen that all season.
It was the rushing game of Rutgers, yes, but credit to Ethan Kaliak-Manis in this game, 16 of 22, 338 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Yes, the costly fumble with catch made lush. There was incredible play by Rutgers through the passing game. That might be the worst game I saw Penn State's secondary play this entire season, and that unfortunately is saying a lot considering what we saw earlier on this year against Northwestern and UCLA, and even the Ohio State game. Like, man, the tackling was again brutal in this game, and that was unfortunately a symptom of this defense most of the year. And we had such high expectations for this secondary and this defense coming into this year. AJ Harris, and coming into the year, I think there were a lot of people thinking he was going to be a first or second round pick in the upcoming NFL draft. And this was just tough to watch. But to the point you were saying, like, Penn State just made the plays when it mattered. They finished. And it was something we talked about coming into this game, is that Rutgers has struggled to finish games this year. And Penn State, granted, they've had their issues, but ultimately took care of business. So what do you think was the issue with the defense today?
Man, I really think the line of scrimmage being controlled by them, honestly, right? Because I just think, obviously, when you can stay on schedule, and when I say stay on schedule, 3 yards, 4 yards on first down, just rushing the ball, right? You get in that rhythm. They were able to stay on track. And then they could, you talked about it. And that was one of the things I noticed. Is like, he only had 16 completions for 300. Like, he's giving chunks when he's completing passes. So that tells you that obviously you're getting our linebackers downhill, you're getting the safeties eyes in the backfield, things like that. Obviously, there was a play that they scored a touchdown on that got highlighted pretty well. Don't know what the defense was. However, the blitz and safety, it's either he has to peel off and go with that running back, or the linebacker that ended up being late, you got to make that read and follow him. I don't know whatever they practiced, they didn't execute it, right? And I think that's been one of those things where I talk about being in position to make plays. And, I mentioned it I might have did earlier this week when I was saying guys were trying to make amazing plays. So in that instance, right, I'm not sure who was supposed to have the back, but someone wasn't doing their assignment football. And if it was a safety, you were trying to make a great play running in late on the blitz and not thinking of like, hey, my assignment still peel off. Or if I'm the linebacker, I'm too slow with my read to say, hey, there's the back getting out. I need to get out because this is a blitz. Honestly, meaning it's going to be hot. So the ball's going to come out hot. But things like that, right? And I think a lot of that throughout the season that you've seen has been frustrating. I think those continue to show up. The defense have been playing better, but those are the things that get you beat by, teams that are over 500 usually, right? When you're blowing assignments like that.
Melinda here in the comments section, is Amari Campbell the player of the game, or is it Katron Allen? I just gave you Katron statistics. Certainly Katron is the offensive player of the game, but Amari Campbell, man, the microcosm of this season on defense occurred on that 4th and 1 late in the fourth quarter where Ethan Kaliak-Manis got stopped in Penn State territory, roughly around the 30-yard line. Zion Tracy, who you were just talking about, flies in, does not wrap, takes out the legs of Kaliak-Manis, and then there's Amari Campbell, Johnny on the spot, just to make sure everything's taken care of. And you can see Amari Campbell walking off the field saying, Zion, you got him. Thank you. Like, he seemed exhausted. This defense had to be exhausted. They were on the field for so much of this game. But I think about what this defense could have been. And realistically, Amari Campbell was not only the player of this game with 14 tackles, 5 on his own, half a sack, half a tackle for loss, plus a fumble recovery and a defensive touchdown. But he's the defensive player of the year for Penn State. And what ticks me off, man, is that he was a spring transfer portal addition. Like, it's the question that will go down with 2025 until the end of time. How did Penn State football miss so badly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, man. To your point, it's just one of those things where, luckily he did get to us, and he obviously he came in and fit in right away. And I think it just over this time of the season, as he got more comfortable and probably as the coaches trusted him more, he just started to, be able to take over and do his natural thing. And I think that's one of the things you talk about, like being Johnny on the spot, is he seems to be, from the outside looking in, a guy who does assignment football, right? And to me, it's like those things where you're in position to make the play, you make the play. Now that turns into what people are talking about it like a great play, but you're just in position and you actually wrap up, you make the play. Obviously, you're in position when the ball comes out. And I think there's a great play without even trying to. There's a great play instead of just falling on it, you scoop and score, right? And because obviously, right, if our offense gets the ball, we don't know if we score. However, you scoop and score in that situation, that changes the whole complexion of the game. And those are the things that are great plays, right? Like I said, because that could have easily been to just dive, secure the ball, make sure we've got it. But it's like, no, let's actually scoop and score this. Let's make a play. And I mean, he's been doing those things, more recently, a lot more out in the open where I think people have seen it, and he's just continued to elevate his game. And he's going to be someone, hopefully, that we're able to keep. But we got to figure out what we're going to do with the coaching situation and what he's going to do, because he is definitely a player that, if not at Penn State, he's going to have a very long line of suitors that want to have him in their program.
We are going to talk about the head coaching search a little bit later on here in this show. I want to continue to take your questions here live on YouTube. Josh, to that point about KJ Duff and Deon, have you ever made a one-handed catch like the one KJ Duff did? It's definitely top 10.
I have not, Josh, man. Probably in practice. There's a lot of highlights that happen in practice that people don't see. But like in a game, I feel like I've made like a diving, maybe fingertip catch, which was pretty good. But I mean, that him today, like that one, you can't even get mad at the corner. Like, man, that is just a on the way down. And it wasn't even like a full palm. It was kind of fingertip. And then to be able to, these guys are D1 athletes for a reason, right? I mean, those are just the things you can't coach. You can't, it reminds me of the NFL when guys used to, a guy made a play and we'd be in film and the coach literally has no explanation. He used to just be like, they get paid too.
Yep.
And it's like that guy got a scholarship for a reason too. But yeah, the answer that I made some pretty good catches, but that one I think you're going to see on highlights for a while. It's just kind of unfortunate. It's Rutgers, so it's not going to be national news. But like, man, if if people get a chance in Sports Center, should definitely see that.
Another one from Josh here. On the broadcast, they made it a point to say that Rutgers was doing simple math. This is alluding to what commentator Jake Butt was saying. Running, if we only had 6 in the box, passing otherwise. Did anyone see such a dominating performance by Rutgers offense? Jake Butt was very good to point that out a number of times, and Penn State just didn't really seem to adjust to it until very, very late in the game. And whenever it was a lighter box, Penn State did not have the answers defensively against that Rutgers rushing attack. And even if they did put more guys in the box, that was a receiver core and a passing game overall where Rutgers picked apart Penn State. So I think we expected them to be able to score. I didn't expect them to put over 500 yards of offense on the board and score their highest total against Penn State in team history. How about you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, once again, it gets back to, I believe, once again, we were looking at all year, I thought we would have a more dominating presence up front on the defensive line. And, maybe that was the game plan, right? Like, hey, we can win up front with a small box because we'll win those one-on-one battles. We don't need to bring extra people in the box if our D line can control that line of scrimmage. Obviously, we weren't. And, obviously you have a game plan, you stick with it because you practiced it all week. So it takes a little bit of time to adjust. But I really think, just from the outside looking in, I think we thought we can control the line of scrimmage with just a defensive line. We don't need extra guys in the box. And that was proof false because they were definitely dominating that and running that ball. And we didn't have an answer for it.
Some of these are some big picture questions. Melinda, did Deny get his preseason goal accomplished to be the best D end in the country? Hard to say. Obviously, this was a disappointing season for Deny Dennis Sutton. I think he has a lot of ability. I think ultimately he's a guy that, based on his build and his game, might be better suited in an NFL 3-4 scheme as a 3-4 defensive end. But you never know how someone at the NFL level is going to evaluate these guys and potentially utilize these guys. Deon, you yourself were a 3rd-round pick of the Seattle Seahawks once upon a time. And another question to that point about evaluation. Zakee Wheatley, Sutton defensive draft predictions. It's so difficult to make that point at this point in the season just because, like, I know the regular season's done and now you're bowl eligible and you can look at that. A lot of these guys are going to start getting ready for the NFL draft or Deon, but I mean, it's really difficult to separate the potential of what this season could have been, the potential of what all these individuals could have been, and what actually played out on tape, and then sit there as an NFL GM and be like, I think Zaki Wheatley is X, Y, and Z. You've lived this evaluation experience, however.
Yeah, I think I'll try to touch on both of them. Where one, me personally with DDS, I think he came on strong at the end. He showed some promise and things like that. But to say the best, I would just say probably not just because purely from a big game standpoint. When you're in big games, that's when you want those guys to make big time plays, and that's one of the things that NFL draft evaluators are looking at is against the top competition. What type of stat line does he have, right? Like I can remember, I want to say Abdul Carter, like in big games, was just a terror, right? And it was just like, wow, like I get it. And I think that was kind of more so what he was going for, and that didn't really pan out this year. Now against some of the lesser competition, some good games and things like that. So obviously, that'll work out in his favor. But I think it'll be tough to say the best in the country this year for him from a personal standpoint. And then for the other draft guys, right? Yeah, season was tough, right? I don't think there's going to be a lot of like just great film. Obviously, NFL evaluators, they get into the nitty gritty of things. So it's going to be like, hey, maybe a play that was absolutely irrelevant on film was like, hey, Wheatley was in perfect position, backpedal, he broke on the ball, they never threw it, but he was in great positions, right? That'll get graded favorably, but then also one of the good things too for these guys is they have the draft, right? The draft has always made higher draft picks out of guys that have had bad seasons. There's always a guy that you kind of heard of or maybe not heard of. They go, all they have to do is run a 4.3, bench press something, jump something, and all of a sudden, NFL coach, one of the things to me is the NFL coaches always feel like they're better coaches than college coaches. Just a fact. So they always feel like, okay, if this guy can run this and jump this high, I can get more out of him than they did in college. And I think that's the one good thing for our guys, right? I think they usually test where we're really big in the sports science, right? They're talking about what guys run and how strong they are and force and all those things. So I think they'll test well. And I think that'll help their draft stock. But just from purely game film, I think it'll be pretty tough to say like, hey, what round they're being looked at now. Because there's so much more between All-Star game, combine, and then, actually get into the draft.
A follow-up question on that from Josh. Who do you guys think need to play in the bowl game to build towards the NFL draft, and who should sit out to stay healthy? Deon, in my opinion, all of them should play because to the points that you just said, there's a lot of bad film that got put on tape this year. There are going to be guys that sit out inevitably, but realistically, what do we always talk about in terms of like what you put on tape is your currency. Justin King talks about that all the time. Terry Smith talked about it a lot coming into this game, whether Penn State came out of it bowl eligible or not. What you put on tape is what you're going to show your next team, whether it's in college or the National Football League. So in my opinion, there's not one person on this roster that can afford to not put more tape out there that is somehow better than what you've seen this season. If anything, if I had to take a shot in the dark, like maybe Katron and Nick, just for a rest standpoint because of the workload that they've had. But outside of them, everybody and their brother from this Penn State football team should be asking to play in the bowl game so they can put something better on freaking tape.
I agree with you. And, part of me feels like a guy like Katron would be like, I'm playing, who knows? But I just feel he's built that way, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think everybody should be ready to play. Obviously, it's different because guys will have, people in their ears and telling them what they need to do and just get ready. And like I said, I just mentioned the combine makes, favorable draft picks out of players just by testing well. So they'll say, hey, we're just going towards the draft and what that looks like. But from purely like the game tape and like just how the season went, I think definitely guys should be playing and should be, happy to get in another game. I'll reference even there was a guy, was it Kalen King, the corner, right? Yeah. And I don't know him personally, loved watching him. Think he's a great guy. But I remember him sitting out and went to an all-star game, didn't have a great week. Draft didn't work out the way he, wanted it to. And I think he's been kind of bouncing around a little bit in the league now. Hopefully he's on a roster, but I know he's been bouncing around. But I'll say all that to say, you never know how many games you have left. right? And how many meaningful games, right? Because that was the year he left, and the next year was the college football championship that he could have been a part of, or he had sat out the Ole Miss game. So it's things like that. And now in the NFL, I don't know how many meaningful snaps he's got. And that's just one guy, and I'm not calling him out to, it's just someone I can think of recently. But it's like all that to say, you don't know how many games you have left. Go out there, play hard, put out good film. And it's just one of those things you don't want to look back and be like, oh man, I wish I had played this, because you just don't know what the future is going to hold. And I don't think anybody on this team is a surefire top 10, top 15 pick where it's just like, hey, you have zero left to prove.
Mm-hmm. Melinda here. This is very sweet of you. Have you guys checked on Justin King? Is he doing okay? Yeah, we've checked on Justin. He's doing just fine. He's helping out his father, Terry Smith, during this time. He's supporting his family as best he can. So Justin's doing just fine. So it was inevitably a conflict of interest for him to do this show. And Deon, you've been awesome to sit in on his behalf for the remainder of the season. So we sincerely appreciate that. Josh, once again in here. Now that we're bowl eligible, do either of you see a potential likely matchup that you'd like to see in a bowl game? I've seen projections, Deon, of the Pinstripe Bowl and Pitt potentially. You just never know where Penn State could get selected now that you're in this kind of no man's land of bowl games. Like, it could be literally anything. You could see Penn State at 6-6 as a huge brand play against a group of 5 team that has maybe 1 or 2 losses, and same thing in the ACC, or it could be a middle of the road SEC team, or an SEC team that's won a little bit more than they've lost, that sort of situation. Like, it's super unpredictable at this point, but I have seen that thrown out there. I will say I would personally love to see Penn State versus Pitt in a bowl game. I think that rivalry would be fun. I selfishly would love to see Penn State versus Mizzou and see Penn State versus Oprah Beulah. I would love to see that, but I have no idea sitting here right now on November 29th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern where Penn State's going to wind up in a bowl game. So, Deon, do you have any fun speculative hypotheticals?
I hadn't even got that far to prediction, to your point, but I do like what you're saying as far as like Penn State Pitt, right? I'm from neither, but I do know guys from Pennsylvania. That was a big thing, right? Like, it's just as far as that's a rivalry that it would have been nice to have. So I definitely would love to see that in a bowl game. And then obviously, I think another thing that you talked about is our brand is so large. Like, the bowls that will be able to select from us aren't usually getting a Penn State, right? Fortunately, for the last years, we've been at like, hey, if it's not Rose Bowl or kind of top tier bowl, like these 6-win bowl games, I've never had a chance to be like, yes, we want Penn State. So now that we are in that position, I think there will be a lot of bowl games that are like, hey, we would love to bring your brand to our bowl game. So I think we'll be able to, get a good selection from that. But yeah, as far as who we play, I haven't even got that far yet, honestly. But I mean, just off the top of the head, that Penn State Pitt one will be, pretty impressive to me.
A last question here from the comments, and I do want to get to the head coaching search. Watching Grunk throw the ball down the field has been a revelation. What is your take on Aller not throwing the ball down the field versus Grunk in the second half of this season? Deon?
Man, I mean, I've been thinking the same thing as far as I wanted the down the field throws earlier in the year. I'm not quite sure why we weren't getting that. I don't know if what the progression tree was the offense different, because we've talked about it right recently as far as we've kind of trickled down the offense. We're not doing all these crazy shifts and motions and all these things. So I don't know if it's fair to say that Drew had the same offense that Grunkemeyer has. So just to say that it has been a revelation. I do like it. I've been calling for chunk plays and things like that throughout the year. So it's good to see that consistently, and hopefully that's something Drew proves in the process going into the draft that he's capable of doing, because that is something that I think we struggled with early. And I can't put my finger exactly on it, but we definitely weren't doing it.
The offense absolutely shifted once Terry Smith took over, and it took a few weeks. Obviously, as the interim head coach, you're not going to shake everything up the first week that you're at the helm. For instance, for Penn State, that was the week of the Iowa game. You saw it week after week. Andy Kotelnicki's system was simplified. You saw less gimmicks and gadgets. You saw less wide receiver screens, even though Andy Kotelnicki can't seem to help himself, can he, on that 4th down in the red zone there, and he tried to throw a tackle screen, as opposed to just trying to smash it in from the 2, and then a lot of wide receiver screens that were just dead in the water for most of this game. Anyway, yeah, man, I think you saw incremental changes in the offense as the year went on. I think Grunkemeyer might be a more confident passer than Drew Aller, and that's just a between the ears thing. It's not a physical gifts thing. That's the impressive part about what Grunkemeyer does, and the head scratching thing about the Drew Aller experience at Penn State. So we'll see how that evolves. The one thing that has certainly been evolving, Deon, has been the discussion surrounding the head coach search for Penn State football, and that there's some people out there saying this coming Tuesday will have an answer. There's some people out there saying that Kalen DeBoer from Alabama is a target for Penn State and that there's potentially interest. Some people saying Bob Chesney from JMU, who Penn State had interest in, but he might have more interest in taking the UCLA job, for instance. Some people saying there's a mystery guy out there that no one's talking about right now. And then there's, of course, the question of would Penn State hire Terry Smith? I'll leave it at that, man. It feels like a lot of speculation and people guessing and cloak and dagger at this point in time. The short answer is we don't know at this point in time, but hopefully Penn State has an answer soon, because you're getting down to the wire here, and it's like the dance is starting to end and there aren't a whole lot of dance partners left on the dance floor. So it's a little concerning for me. I don't know how you feel, Deon.
Yeah, we got to stop dragging our feet, man. It's one of those things, like you're saying, right? Unless we have a guy really labeled and that they're saying, like, behind closed doors, yep, I want to come there, and we're like starting to work out a deal, and it's someone with another team that we just trying to keep hush hush. We have to kind of figure this out really quickly, because other schools obviously are locking up their coaches, fixing recruiting classes. I think obviously we're going to be a heavy transfer portal year, regardless of what we do, but you do still want it sooner than later as far as figuring out a coach. And like you said, the biggest thing is Penn State has played it so close to vest. You have no clue. Like, it seems like every other week there's somebody new, and then they get signed by their school, and then another school has hired this guy. And so it's just like we really haven't heard much of anything. I think everybody's just been throwing guesses just because we haven't heard anything. But I do want to, like I think everybody else, like, get that answer much sooner than later. We're a big time program. Guys need to know who their leader is going to be.
If the Kalen DeBoer lead is credible, I'm intrigued by that, considering this was a guy who was in the national title game with Washington 2 years ago against Michigan. And despite the astronomical expectations for him at Alabama, he has still put a good product on the field. Is it Nick Saban national championship undefeated every single season good? No, but by a lot of standards in college football, it's pretty damn good. So I think Kalen DeBoer, if that were real, it would be very interesting. Bob Chesney is somebody that has been discussed heavily, following in the footsteps kind of Kurt Signetti, who spent time at JMU and a number of other schools before getting to Indiana. Now Indiana's in the Big Ten title game against Ohio State next weekend. Undefeated season this year for the Hoosiers, after a lot of people, myself included, thought they were a one-hit wonder last year. Chesney seems to have kept JMU rolling. So is he somebody that could be a good pick for that position, but doesn't have a track record necessarily of getting to the big games or playing in big games? And how could he? He's only gotten to the level that he's at right now. And then I think the question of Terry Smith. Do you sit tight with Terry Smith? I think Terry has stabilized this team despite what we saw on the field today, which was worrisome and stressful, and one of the sloppiest defensive performances of this season. Very uncharacteristic of what I think we've learned thus far about Terry Smith. So you kind of have to treat that as an anomaly, but you just don't know how this is going to go. My gut says, Deon, after 12 years of James Franklin, Penn State is probably going to move on and make an external hire. I would love to see Terry Smith get a shot, but it's heart versus brain, if that makes any sense. My heart would love to see Terry Smith be the guy. My brain is thinking it's going to be an external hire, and even still, my brain has no freaking clue who it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, everybody's in that same boat. Like I said last time, I wouldn't be shocked at all by an external hire. Obviously, big time program, could be looking at wanting a guy who has some head coaching experience at whatever level that is, or, a big time coordinator or something like that that has a little bit more experience, right? But that's nothing against Coach Terry. And it all really depends on what, Kraft is looking for. What is his vision? What he's looking for to move forward. It seems like the NIL and things like that have been a discussion point with these head coaching candidates that's kind of leaked out. So, whatever that direction he wants it to look like, and the coach that aligns best with that, maybe not the best football coach, but the best leader and the best. It's so many things that it could be, right? It just really depends on what they're looking for. It's kind of like, just in the job world, right? There's a ton of good people for positions. It just depends on what that company is looking for and who fits that best. But that doesn't mean who they don't select isn't good. So, it just really depends on what Kraft is looking for as far as this program moving forward and what direction we're going in and what our identity is.
Today, Penn State winds down a very complicated and confusing 2025 regular season schedule with a win in Piscataway, New Jersey. Penn State defeats Rutgers by a score of 40-36. The spread entering this game, according to FanDuel, was 13.5 in the favor of Penn State. Penn State finishes the regular season 6-6. They are bowl eligible. So what bowl game will Penn State wind up in? Will they accept a bowl invitation? Who would be the opponent? Where would it be? All that good stuff. Who's going to be the head coach? Who's staying? Who's going? Transfer portal, the NFL draft. There are about 1 billion more questions regarding Penn State football, and the regular season is over. So December and January are going to be very, very busy for Penn State football. We're going to cover all of it here. I'm Tom Hannifan. He is Deon Butler, the Nittany Lion legend. Thank you all so much for joining us here on State of State, a Penn State football show presented by FanDuel.